Hello, welcome to American Reversion. I'm Steve Smith. Before we start, I'm sure that YouTube is going to demonetize this one, perhaps even shadow ban it. So I'm going to ask if you would, while you're watching, as long as it stays up, if you would please make sure that you're subscribed. Hit a thumbs up, hit the bell to make sure that you are subscribed. Share this with your friends if you would. And if you feel led to and want to support our channel, please come over to the Patreon channel. The link is down below, and become a member. And that's a great way you can support us if you believe in what we're doing here. Our country was based on, as we know, the Judeo-Christian ethic, and the church as both the body of believers and the organizations themselves had a lot to do with the founding and the development and the security and the evolution of our country. And in most cases, that's been positive. I think that in the last 40 or 50 years, that's changed quite a bit. And that's what I want to talk about, because in my opinion, the church is, and by that I don't mean the body of believers as is the biblical sense, but I mean the organized denominations. For the most part, there are some who are not a part of this, have been one of the most powerful and energetic threats to the foundational principles of our country and our families, and they are one of the most dangerous enemies to us now. In light of the leak, if that's what it was, out of the Supreme Court about the upcoming decision on Roe v. Wade, this is going to come further to the light. I think it's going to be a lot more important, and we're going to be hearing more and more out of the churches and our liberal clergy attempting to sway an already weak and, I won't say immoral, I will say amoral population to further their agenda, which lines up pretty much to the agenda of the liberal wing of our country, and to the New Order, as you know, to the reset and all of this. I'm going to read, well, first off, I want to return and visit for just a minute one of our founders. It's one of the most famous quotes regarding this is John Adams. Many of you are familiar with the last part of this quote. I'm going to start a little bit earlier in the quote. He says, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net." Isn't that the truth? What's happened to our Constitution? Our Constitution, this is the part most people know. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. That's exactly right. One of the goals which I have read in one past, one of the goals of the Communist Party, the U.S. Communist Party, was to insinuate itself into and destroy the churches, because they were foundational to the moral pinnings of the country, to the families and all that, and they've certainly succeeded in that. The churches have done more, in my opinion, to destroy what the country is supposed to stand for than perhaps any other institution that I can think of. You can argue, you can say, well, corporations, yeah, but corporations are always after the money. You see, the churches were supposed to be the defenders of the faith. They were supposed to be the leaders, the shepherds of the people, and certainly they've gotten away from that. Now, I'm going to read something here. It's from stream.org. It's a brilliant article, and then I'm going to discuss it just a little bit. The title is Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene Speaks the Truth to Bishops, and it's written by a guy, John Smirak, who is a Catholic. This is specifically about the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic. I want to say a couple things. I'm not Catholic, and so I can't come up from that standpoint. I have dealt a little bit with the sexual abuse situations in the Catholic Church from an outside standpoint. But in fairness, and so that we're not just specifically thinking we can't restrict this to the Catholic Church, I've left every church I've ever belonged to. I have left the Methodist Church. I have left the Baptist Church. I have left the Christian Church, the Disciples of Christ denomination, twice. Each time over what I felt they were getting away from the proper message of Christ, and in some cases far afield. They stopped becoming a religious organization and started found their way into the politics of the country. And I haven't seen any of them go a conservative way with that. It's always towards the left. It's always towards the liberal. So I'm going to read this, and I think it's just brilliant. And as we come into this political season, and especially after this Roe decision, which many of us think was the result of a lot of prayer, a long time of prayer, as Franklin Graham said, this is the result of years and years of prayer. We can keep this in mind. And as always, I will put the link to this up over on the Patreon channel so that you can have it, you can refer to it, and you can send it to friends if you'd like to. So here I'll begin the article. He says, my favorite member of Congress reminds me of my favorite Christian saint, Joan of Arc, who said that while church authorities were trying her as a witch, so this isn't new for the church, is it? I am not afraid. I was born for this. And he's speaking, of course, comparing Marjorie Taylor Greene to Joan of Arc. Nor is Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene afraid of the U.S. Catholic bishops who nod and smile and offer infanticide advocate Joe Biden the body and blood of Christ. They can't take anything from her that they haven't already stolen. Her trust in the church, where she grew up, got married, and wanted to raise her children, all that is gone. Gone not just for Taylor Greene, but for 4 out of 10 native-born U.S. Catholics. That is the percentage of homegrown U.S. Catholics who leave the church and never return, according to Pew Research. Now, I want to interject here. As a non-Catholic, we have a lot of people also leaving the traditional churches. And some of them leaving for these feel-good rock concert churches that say whatever feels good, you do it because God wants you to be happy. So it's not just the Catholic Church. This is going to be aimed at the Catholic Church. He says they're fleeing the bungled sex scandal that saw thousands of child victims. Again, not restricted to the Catholic Church. They're shunning the lukewarm drool that too many hear from the pulpit on Sundays. Again, not restricted to the Catholic Church. They're shrugging at the vapid platitudes of social justice and tolerance offered their kids in most Catholic schools and other religious schools, a growing number of which are embracing the LGBTQ, my name is Legion ideology. And you all know what that refers to. My name is a Legion. But that's not too surprising, since the ratio of homosexual priests is somewhere between 15 and 50%, compared to 2% of men as a whole. No wonder we never hear about sexual sins from the pulpit. It might get good priests persecuted by their less faithful brethren. And what is the bishop's response? to call for more Latino immigrants, legal or not, to briefly warm the pews until they too flee for the hills. For the first time in history, not even half of U.S. Latinos claim to be Catholic. Of course, the main appeal of such Latinos to our bishops is that they're disempowered newcomers unlikely to complain. They also come trailing long strings of cash. Some 40% of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops' budget comes from federal nonprofit contracts, mostly for processing immigrants, legal or illegal. As I wrote here years ago, our shepherds have given up on American Catholics and decided to replace us with imports. No wonder the bishops denounced every effort of the Trump administration to impose law, order, and safety at our borders. He was threatening their cash cow. Where else would they get the money to pay for sex abuse settlements? Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about all these scandals in a winning interview with truth-telling Catholic journalist Michael Voris. She attributed the bishop's systemic cover-up of child sex abuse, apparent apathy over abortion, and embrace of human trafficking to Satan. And she said that as much as it grieved her, she couldn't, as a mother, trust her kids around priests whose bishops for so long protected perverts. So she'd moved to another evangelical church. All that roused an old, toothless bulldog from his snoring on a long, rusty chain to growl at her. William Donahue runs the tiny, forgotten pressure group, the Catholic League for Civil and Religious Rights. A liberal comedian once mocked Donahue as one guy with a computer. Donahue spent much of the 2000s bullying and gaslighting parents of sex abuse victims, inquisitive journalists, and others, probing the systemic cover-up, I should clean these, of sex crimes against kids by recidivist Catholic priests. Donahue is an old-school Irish ward politician, albeit a lace curtain one, since he pays himself over $1 million per year, some 40% of the League's entire budget. He thinks that one thuggish threat can silence troublemakers, so he denounced Taylor Greene as a disgrace for sharing her loss of faith and demanded that GOP House Leader Kevin McCarthy discipline her. Of course, Kevin McCarthy has less moral authority right now than Harvey Weinstein, so Greene has no need to worry. But I want to speak up and thank Representative Greene for voicing the outrage, exhaustion, and grief we Catholics share and are absolutely powerless to do anything about. Indeed, learned helplessness seems to be the state that our bishops wish to cultivate among us. Isn't learned helplessness what our politicians want to develop within us? As I told evangelical activist Bunny Pounds, one reason so many Catholics throw themselves into the pro-life movement is we have absolutely no power to change anything at all in our church. Well, you could leave. So we put our energy into an issue most bishops don't care about and can't control. I want to just interject this first. As I said, I've left 3 churches. I know that the Catholic brand is much more culturally centered than are some of the other denominations. But staying within an organization, I say this lovingly to all my Catholic friends, staying within an organization like this, you're giving your implicit approval and support for it. You might want to consider that. Many have left. And who did Christ hold his greatest admonitions for? The religious leaders, right? Who were doing wrong. I speak from long, bitter experience, he continues. At age 16, I reported that the religion teachers at the Catholic high school my father helped to build were scoffing at the virginity of Mary and the resurrection of Jesus. So I was told to find another school by the principal. I've had my dealing with Catholic bishops. That doesn't surprise me. The bishop didn't even bother answering my letter of complaint. The school chaplain laughed at me and later taunted me about the contents of my confessions in front of some teachers. He should have been excommunicated for that, but as it turned out, he'd be removed for molesting teenagers. I found a lawyer and threatened to sue. They let me graduate in peace. What we as Catholics have come to see over 20 years of drip, drip, drip revelations since 2002 was this. The bishops care about their financial bottom lines first, their reputations second, their fellow priests third, and the souls of mere laymen barely at all. How else to explain the shell game so many bishops played, moving abusers from parish to parish and buying victims' silence? Why else did they exempt bishops from penalties for shuffling abusers in 2002? It didn't help that the head of the U.S. Catholic bishops of the time, Theodore McCarrick, had himself molested a boy for many years. But that's just one secret pervert, you might say. I wish it were. How can we explain the way McCarrick's successor, Cardinal Donald Wuerl, responded to a priest who made sadistic porn films with teen boys in the rectory? Wuerl paid the ex-priest a pension for the rest of his life in the gay bed and breakfast he operated in Cuba. Offered him hush money not to name other abusers. Then when the pervert got murdered, flew his body back for a hero's funeral. What part of that makes sense? I hope some of you are listening to this. And I hope that those of you, whatever church you're in, will take a good hard look at this and say, what is my remaining in a church like this saying about me? As a lifelong zealous Catholic, I simply cannot wrap my head around these things. If they're not from Satan, Mr. Donahue, where would you say they come from? From Christ? Our author, Joseph Sciambra, fell into the gay lifestyle after being molested by a priest while still a teenager. Some 20 years later, he repented and returned to the church, only to find one priest after another affirming the sin he was desperate to renounce. After years of trying to find any Catholic bishop willing to correct this, he joined the Eastern Orthodox Church as a spiritual refuge. Sciambra told me, this is a quote from Sciambra, "In recent months, the term grooming has emerged as an oft-used remark on social media in relation to the mislabeled Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, which attempts to discourage public school teachers from having classroom discussions about sexual orientation with children. But such conversations have been taking place in the Catholic Church for decades, usually under the guise of spiritual direction offered by priests. This has been part of the grooming process, but in Catholicism, such grooming is also a form of indoctrination. Because in terms of LGBTQ theory, a number of Catholic priests, particularly the Jesuits, expound the false dogma that someone is born gay and even made that way by God. At this point, some predatory priests co-opt God in their plans for manipulation and abuse of the vulnerable. One of the situations that I was involved in, a person that I knew who was victimized by priests, when they told their parents, was told, "You'll go to hell for telling on the priests." The central lie sold us by Caesar, Mammon, and Sodom is that sexual passions are not a moral challenge, but a birthright. We must affirm, support, and welcome every perversion as part of diversity and silence critics as haters. Cultivating teen boys is not an aberration, but a core element of gay May culture. In his 30s, gay liberation icon Harvey Milk had an underage boyfriend. For how long will minor attracted persons remain excluded from the Rainbow Coalition? If the confirmation of pedophile advocate Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court is any indicator, not long. And too many of our bishops will react to that development with a sigh of relief, because it might spare them some legal fees. We know, we've talked, that's the end of the article, we have talked about where do these things come from that are attacking our country and attacking our families. And most of us realize that this isn't a physical war, it's a spiritual war. We don't know whether we are going to win this political battle, but we know that we're going to eventually win the spiritual battle. These things are going to be coming faster and harder, I think, between now and the coming elections. This is an opportunity for those who will stand up, express their opinions, share this with others, to participate in that battle. Most won't. Most will listen to this or read it and say, well, that's just terrible. That's just horrible. How can this be? But how many people will really get up, put themselves on the line, share this with friends of theirs who they feel it might offend? How many will be willing to risk a friendship for standing against this kind of thing? Probably not many. But if a few will, it might make all the difference. And so I'm asking you, if you will, if you'll share this with your friends, that's what we need. And we see now with the things we're seeing, haven't we seen some victories lately? I have a tendency to think that this is a God at work. You may have a different idea, I don't know. But if it's not, it's sure working in the direction that He would work, right? And sometimes all He wants is for us to stand up and do what He directs us to, and do what we can. And if we'll do that, He'll do the rest. So that's my thought for today. I hope that you'll share this. I hope that you'll talk about it with your friends, including your Catholic friends. And you who are Catholic, you know that I am not attacking you at all in this, and I am not attacking the good of the body of believers. I am attacking the evil that exists in the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, the Disciples of Christ Church, the Nazarene Church, every church there is who harbors, excuses, and by doing so supports sin. So you all, I hope you'll share it. I ask that you support the channel if you feel led to. Again, you can do that by becoming a member. The link is down there to our Patreon channel. However you want to support us is certainly appreciated. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.